Don't Open Your Eyes. This movie is directed and written by Dimitri Yun. And this one focuses on a male nurse as he is employed to look after this disabled elderly woman by this woman called Anne. Now, this disabled elderly woman lives in this very remote kind of area, this very kind of large remote house. So he's basically looking at a living carer whilst his character Anne is going away for some reason. So he's there and he's ultimately looking after this woman. She's turning into be a bit of an odd old bird, shall we say. She's saying some kind of weird stuff, and you know, maybe kind of this guy is feeling a little bit kind of freaked out. This woman is particularly difficult. He just puts it down to dementia, but there may be something more sinister going on here. She may in fact be involved in some type of sinister devil worship, ritual sacrifice, that kind of stuff. The first hour of the movie is simply this guy looking after this woman, and in the last half an hour or so, that's when the spooky stuff starts to happen. So let's discuss a little bit further. Don't Open Your Eyes. So this is a movie of two halves, or more appropriately I should say, 2/3 and then the last third. Because the first 2/3 of this movie are well acted, but dull. Because the first hour of this movie is literally this guy looking after this woman. So if you're interested in looking after, watching a carer care for an elderly person for an hour, that's the first kind of hour of this movie. It's literally like that. The plot moves at a snail's pace in that first half an hour. Yes, there are a couple of subtle kind of like bit foreshadowing about what's maybe going on, but ultimately you're simply watching this guy look after this elderly woman for the first hour of the movie. And let me tell you, that hour drags. The performances are quite good, I will say that, and especially the male nurse played by Tom Kemnitz, I think his name is, actually does quite a nice job of seeming like a pretty normal guy actually, who's just kind of thrust in the situation. Ultimately has to kind of deal with this kind of very kind of like cranky old lady who seems to be losing her marbles a little bit. But let me get to the last third of this movie, and that is when it gets proper scary. So there are some fantastically horrific and scary scenes in this last third of this movie that are really terrifying, I've got to say. The use of lighting here is absolutely fantastic. The use of sound effects, brilliant. I mean, it's kind of like, even in the last third of the movie, it's not overt, to be quite honest with you. It is kind of peppered throughout this last third of the movie, but it is done super effectively. And then we kind of come to the chilling climax, which does kind of make sense, I've got to say, but maybe a little bit unsatisfying for the most part. So, how do we look at this movie as a whole? I've got to say, if they had maybe kept the first half an hour or so of characterization and kind of getting to know you, but maybe change the middle half an hour to be a little bit more on the horror side and stuff like that, then I feel this movie could have been a genuine creepy classic. But as it stands, you are kind of desperately kind of wanting to stay awake after this first hour, because it becomes very tiresome. And when we get to that kind of the last third is very good. But you kind of wish you had more of it, and you kind of like, at this point you're kind of switching off a little bit at that point in the time. So it becomes like a little bit of a slog overall if you're looking at this piece as an entire movie, because the pacing of this movie is unfortunately quite bad. Also, I've got to say the music doesn't help with this film. It's very kind of obvious, kind of like piano, you know, spooky music. Something's going to happen. There's going to be a jump scare. The music's ramping up. It's like, come on. It's just like, it's really obvious that it's kind of like something's going to happen in a second. So I didn't like the very overt horror music, because it just makes it seem too obvious about, like, I'm expecting something to go plop and jump out the dark now. So overall, a great last third of this movie, a goddamn boring first 2/3 of the movie. So overall the movie ends up being kind of average. But if you can get through the first hour, there is some treats for you towards the end of this movie that will be genuinely scaring if you like a good scare fest. But it's whether you can sit for that first hour. If only they had kind of like maybe kind of like integrated more of the kind of the spooky stuff earlier on. But anyway, I'll give this movie a 5 out of 10. It's kind of average as it stands at the moment. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.